Why do you feel so strongly about this, and how did we get here?
I know, but that's a very good question. How did we get here? It seems extraordinary that we're having to even question this. But it seems that this has been peddled up and down the country, that these gender-affirming guidelines are being promoted in schools all over the country. And we're seeing a massive escalation in referrals to the gender clinic, 3,000% in a decade. So we see this as very, very important. And as it affected two of our children, we felt we should make a stand about this. This is a very important issue, a safeguarding issue for children.
What was the point of conflict with the school specifically? What were they wanting to happen that you were not prepared to permit?
The main issue was the letter from the school. I mean, one of the things it says, and even the belief that transgenderism may not be the best thing for a child was deemed transphobic. Also in the letter was mentioned that, that if another child wouldn't recognise the child that was transitioning as a real boy or girl, that would be deemed transphobic, and the parents too would also be deemed transphobic. Crumbs. How can we have this sort of stuff being peddled in schools? It's a political ideology. And really, for 6-year-old children, it can't be right.
Sally, would it make any difference if your son hadn't been 6, he'd been 12 or 14?
That's a very good question. I think particularly that young at 6, they cannot make a decision of that magnitude. I think at 12 you can have a better conversation with them. With 6, we were like, how do you even begin to talk about this? But I think, as we've already said, this is becoming an issue for children. That there's a massive increase in children who are really confused about their identity, and whether that's 12 or 5 or 6, this is concerning. Really, as children, they don't have that capacity to make decisions, and I think a lot of them don't realise the consequences of affirming in a gender, because from the evidence, if you keep affirming a child in the preferred gender they would like to switch to, then it does lead to a road of puberty blockers and medication and cross-sex hormones, which can cause sterilisation. So these are serious issues that need really to be looked at seriously by the government.
Nigel, we debate this a lot on this news channel. It's debated a lot elsewhere, isn't it? But there is another side to the argument, obviously. Sally making the point about some of the effects and impacts that we see. Well, the trans campaigners say, if you don't let that transition begin, you're storing up problems for the future that will relate to mental health, and they sometimes invoke the spectre of suicide. What do you say to those campaigners?
Nonsense. We submitted a 500-page report to the judge with expert evidence from endocrinologists and psychologists, from the US and from the UK, and the evidence is overwhelming that peddling this kind of ideology is very, very dangerous. Yes, of course, we understand that there are children that suffer from gender confusion, but when you sort of put it into the school environment and you start teaching that gender and sex are two different things, and that boys can become girls, girls can become boys, is simply not true. It's not even scientific. Medically, we know. We study at school biology, don't we? And that we have, in the human genome, we have XX and we have XY. We have male and we have female. Of course, there are some issues where children are born with physical complications. But in general, we know biologically we have male and we have female. And that is the truth.
Sally, I'm usually always, full of admiration for people who stand apart from the crowd and take a stand, a moral stand. But there's always a price to be, there's usually a price to be paid, isn't there? And whether that's been shunned at the school gates or some nasty emails, it's often the case that you can't stand apart from the crowd and not see some sort of repercussions. How have other parents of children at school with yours responded? What did they say? Were they supportive? Were they critical? It was a mix, I guess.
Yes, definitely a mix. And I think this is the thing, that people are so scared to speak out, that those who do who do support us are very quiet about it. They just don't talk about it. And we've had a mixed variety of people just blanking us, people verbally saying shame on you or things like that. So we have had a mixed bag. But I think on the whole, from parents, if we look at it in a national perspective, there are many, many parents, in fact, the majority of parents that would agree with us. Whether they speak it out is another thing, but most people, I think, agree with us. And I think the tide is turning now. People are seeing that this has become like a health crisis, and that we need to seriously look at this.
It is life-changing as well, Colin, because actually, if you do put your head above the parapet, there are, I would say, actually severe consequences to that. Because your life could absolutely change in the community. You could be sort of, shunned for the rest of your life in the environment where you're living.
Yeah.
As committed Christians, we believe that goes with the territory. There's a story in the Bible about a guy called Jeremiah who kept warning the people to turn from their bad ways, and he had a really hard time. And I think that's what happens when you put your head above the parapet and you speak truth. People are offended and people want to attack. They get very, very angry. But I'd say, well, as a committed Christian, it comes with the territory. It comes with the territory of telling the truth.